Okay, so what we're going to do here is try to recapture what we talked about in class today, since there were so many people absent between sections 3 and 4 of science. So just briefly, quick reminder, we're kind of in the home stretch here. We have two things left to do. One is to write the mini unit test, which will be next Friday, January 26th, and then also to design and build the cellular mobile. So just really quick, again, to remind everyone, the research summary, aka the magazine article, which was worth 40 marks, is done. Everyone's cell poster has been turned in, also to be marked, worth 40 marks. Your process journal, that is ongoing. Basically, we'll be collecting more evidence, artifacts of the process, of your creative process and problem solving as we work on the cell mobiles. That'll be worth 20 marks, and then the mini unit test, as mentioned, 50 marks. And this has all been reflected in the updated Cell Mobile project description. We then talked a little bit more about the Cell Mobile. In fact, we got into some design work today. So just as a reminder, the prompt or the driving statement here is that the cellular mobile will be a representation of some important characteristic of your cell. For many people, this will be a physical characteristic of their cell, something that that's easily communicated because the way their cell looks, say it's a long spindle fiber, a neuron that's in charge of communicating information from one end of an organism to another, they probably are going to really quickly latch on to the idea of showing that long length in their cell mobile. Other people have more of a challenge, perhaps, if their cell is perhaps does not have anything that's physical in its importance, but maybe what it becomes or its job is, its function isn't as easily observed. Say, for instance, if you have a zygote is just going to look like a generic cell. It's going to be fairly round. It's going to have all the regular organelles. However, obviously, it's got a pretty important role because once it starts dividing, it becomes the organism that it's the offspring of. So again, we're trying to create something that is going to highlight at least one important characteristic of your cell or the organism that you've been assigned. And what we mean by this, here's an example. So characterization, we're going to overemphasize this characteristic. This is an old cartoon character, Popeye the Sailor Man, and Popeye was a marketing ploy developed probably back in the 50s, a cartoon character that would get kids to eat more spinach because when Popeye ate spinach, his muscles got big and he was super strong. And then the over-characterization here are his large forearms. So he's got these big muscular forearms. That's the characteristic that's been overemphasized due to eating lots of spinach. And then what we're making will be a mobile. So we are making mobiles. And for instance, based upon the work of Alexander Calder III, who is generally credited with perhaps at least coming up with the idea of a mobile as a piece of art. And so here's something that he had designed and built at one point. This might be one of his more famous pieces of work. One thing to pay attention to is notice that all the separate pieces are connected in a way that allows for movement, and that a lot of design and thought went into the balance. So your mobile will presumably hang from just one wire and then will be balanced, and the connections between the different pieces will be made in such a way that allow for movement. You can see here that he probably had to do a lot of work, perhaps with a prototype, and perhaps quite a bit of calculating to get this to hang in a balanced manner. I believe that these pieces are all made of metal, so they're quite heavy, and I believe that that is a solid sphere, a solid metal ball. And so if it's hanging way off at the end here, you had to put a lot of thought into how to balance this mass against the remaining masses so that when this object was hung, it would hang and move and be in good balance. And the same thing goes here. It's not the greatest picture, but what I'm trying to show here that this part here, this arm, if you will, is perpendicular to this arm, and then these other pieces are perpendicular to the ones that they're attached to. So there's quite a bit of movement here, and again, a lot of balance as well. Again, please note that this hangs from one singular connection, one wire. And not all of his work hung from ceilings, and in fact, your piece may not hang from the ceiling. If you can think of a way to place it on the floor that still allows for movement, that would be great. So this is an outdoor piece found in Edinburgh, Scotland. And probably when the wind blows, when there's a breeze, these kind of weather vane looking paddles catch that movement, and it rotates around and moves as the weather or the wind changes. Okay, so that's a big thing that we talked about today. And then we got a little bit into the design process. So I don't know how much of this you can do at home, but we went through the process of, first of all, this idea of crazy 8. So we had folded a piece of paper so it ended up having 8 boxes. And for 40 seconds in each box, we just try to come up with some idea. And the trick there is to go fast, jot anything down. You can't write anything down that's wrong, but you were just trying to jot down different ideas that were perhaps something that could be built or designed based upon the important characteristic or characteristics of your cell. Once we had those 8, we took a few minutes to pick out our 3 favorites, and then we took those 3 favorites and expanded upon them. So we sketched in more detail. And then that was the end of the day. We spent the last 10 minutes or so of the class period down in the Design Tech Lab itself, looking at some of the materials, talking a little bit about safety and how we're going to be using the tools in the Design Tech Lab. And that was our day.